What happens when someone's need to control everything collides with a truth they can't handle? In the small, dusty town of Redstone, where the quarry's hum was the heartbeat of the community, Karen Hargrove was a name that carried weight literally and figuratively. She was a hulking figure, her presence as imposing as the granite slabs hauled from the pits. Her face, perpetually twisted into a scowl, seemed carved from the same stone, with small, piercing eyes that judged everything and everyone. Karen was the self-appointed guardian of Redstone's unwritten rules, a one-woman tribunal who decided what was proper and what wasn't. She thrived on complaints, her voice a grating siren that echoed through the town's only diner, the grocery store, and the dusty lots where kids played. No one dared cross her, not because she was loved, but because her wrath was a storm nobody wanted to weather. I was new to Redstone, a mechanic fresh from the city, hired to keep the quarry's trucks running. My name's Jake, and I wasn't looking for trouble, just a paycheck and a quiet life. But trouble found me on a scorching July afternoon when Karen's shadow loomed over my garage bay. I was elbow-deep in the engine of a battered dump truck, sweat stinging my eyes, when her voice cut through the air like a chainsaw. "That truck," she bellowed, pointing a meaty finger at the vehicle. "It's breaking my rules. It's too loud, too dirty, and it's parked all wrong. You fix this, or I'll have your job." I wiped my hands on a rag, squinting at her. "Ma'am, this truck's just doing its job. It hauls rock. It's gonna be loud and dirty. And it's parked fine right where the foreman told me to leave it." Her face reddened, her jowls quivering with indignation. "Don't you ma'am me, boy. I run this town's standards. You think you can roll in here with your city ways and ruin our peace? I'll have you fired by sundown." She stormed off, her flip-flops slapping the pavement, leaving a cloud of dust and dread in her wake. I didn't take her seriously at first. I'd dealt with bullies before, guys who thought yelling louder made them right. But Redstone was different. By evening, whispers reached me at the diner. Karen had called an emergency town meeting at the community hall, demanding my dismissal. She'd rallied her loyalists, a small but loud group of busybodies who hung on her every word. They called themselves the Redstone Preservation Society, but everyone else called them Karen's cronies. I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was up against a machine. The next morning, I found a note taped to my toolbox. "Quit now, or you'll regret it." No signature, but the looping, aggressive handwriting screamed Karen. I crumpled it and got back to work, but unease settled in my gut. The quarry was my lifeline, and Karen was a wrecking ball. Days passed, and her campaign intensified. She'd stand outside the quarry gates, shouting about environmental violations and disrespectful newcomers. She filed complaints with the county, claiming the trucks were a public nuisance. My boss, a grizzled man named Hank, warned me to keep my head down. "She's got no real power," he said, "but she's got a mouth that never quits." Still, the pressure was mounting. Orders got delayed, inspections got scheduled, and the other mechanics started giving me side-eye, as if I were the problem. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One evening, as I locked up the garage, a wiry old man approached me. He was Amos, a retired quarry worker who'd lived in Redstone his whole life. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp with a mischief that didn't match his age. "Heard you're in Karen's crosshairs," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Want to know something she doesn't want out?" I nodded, wary but curious. Amos leaned in, his voice low. "Karen's got a secret. That quarry she's always complaining about. Her daddy owned half of it back in the day. Sold his share to fund her fancy college degree, but she flunked out. She's been bitter ever since, hates the quarry, 'cause it reminds her of her own failure. She's not protecting Redstone. She's settling a score." The revelation hit me like a sledgehammer. Karen's crusade wasn't about rules or community pride, it was personal. Armed with this, I decided to confront her, but not in the way she expected. The next town meeting was scheduled at the quarry's edge, a symbolic jab at the workers she despised. I knew she'd be there, ready to grandstand. I wasn't going to let her steamroll me. The meeting was a circus. Karen stood on a makeshift platform, her bulk straining the wooden slats, her voice booming through a megaphone. "This quarry's a disgrace," she roared. "And that mechanic Jake thinks he's above our rules. We demand accountability." Her cronies cheered, but the crowd was mixed. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. Quarry workers, their families, and regular townsfolk filled the lot, their faces a mix of frustration and exhaustion. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Karen," I called out, loud enough to cut through her tirade. "If you're so worried about rules, why don't you tell everyone about your dad's stake in this quarry? Or how you've been using your standards to bully anyone who reminds you of your own mistakes?" The crowd went silent. Karen's face froze, her mouth half open. For a moment, I thought she'd explode, but she just stood there, clutching the megaphone like a lifeline. Then Amos stepped up beside me, his voice calm but cutting. "She's right about one thing," he said. "The quarry's loud. Always has been. But it's also what keeps this town alive. Karen's daddy knew that when he cashed out. She's just too ashamed to admit it." The air shifted. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Karen's cronies looked confused, their loyalty wavering. A woman in the back, a quarry worker's wife, spoke up. "Is that true, Karen? You've been making our lives hell over some old grudge." Others chimed in, their voices growing bolder. Karen's scowl deepened, but her confidence was cracking. She tried to recover, slamming the megaphone down. "Lies. All of it. You're just protecting your own kind." But the crowd wasn't buying it. The truth had slipped out, and it was sharper than her screams. Hank, my boss, took the opportunity to step in, addressing the crowd with a steadiness I hadn't seen before. "Jake's a good worker. The quarry's not perfect, but it's honest. Karen's complaints have cost us time and money. Maybe it's time we focus on what keeps Redstone going, not tearing it down." Karen's face was a storm cloud, but she had no comeback. The crowd's mood had turned, and her cronies were slipping away, muttering excuses. She stormed off the platform, her flip-flops slapping louder than ever, but the sound was hollow now. The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations, and for the first time, I felt Redstone might not be Karen's kingdom anymore. Days later, the fallout was undeniable. Karen's complaints to the county were dismissed after Amos and others provided records of her father's quarry dealings. The town started to see her for what she was, a woman consumed by her own failures, lashing out to feel powerful. She still lurked around, but her voice carried less weight. The quarry kept humming, and I kept my job. But the real reckoning came quietly. One evening, as I worked late, Karen appeared at the garage, alone. Her face was still harsh, but her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. "You think you won," she said, her voice low. "But you don't know what it's like to lose everything." I leaned against the truck, meeting her gaze. "Maybe not, but you don't get to make everyone else pay for it." She didn't reply. She just turned and walked away, her silhouette fading into the dusk. I didn't feel triumph, just a strange pity. Karen had built her own cage, and now she was trapped in it, her rules meaningless against the truth. Redstone moved on. The quarry trucks rumbled, the diner buzzed, and the town found its rhythm again. Karen's screams faded into the background, a lesson in what happens when pride and pain turn into poison. Sometimes, the loudest voices are just echoes of something broken, and the only way to quiet them is to face them head-on. Yindi.